When you see the sleek, polished lines of a P-51 Mustang today, you see the Cadillac of the skies. You see the machine that broke the Luftwaffe and saved the B-17 bombers. It is the ultimate symbol of American aerial supremacy. But if you were a 19-year-old pilot sitting in that cockpit in 1944, you didn't see a legend, you saw a glass cannon. While history books focus on the glory of the dogfight, the classified reality was far more gruesome. Nearly 80% of the Mustangs lost in World War II were never shot down by an enemy fighter. They were killed by a single stray bullet, often fired by a panicked farmer or a teenage flak gunner. This is the story of the hidden horrors of the P-51 Mustang. It's the story of why winning the air war was actually the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt pilots until the very last second of the conflict. And in one tragic case, 3 hours after it ended. By 1943, the U.S. 8th Air Force was dying. The daylight precision bombing doctrine was being written in the blood of B-17 crews. Without escorts, the flying fortresses were sitting ducks. The P-47 Thunderbolt was too thirsty. The Spitfire was too short-legged. Then came the Mustang. By mating a North American airframe with the British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Allies found a cheat code. The Mustang could fly from London to Berlin, fight for 30 minutes, and fly back. But there was a system error built into its DNA. The Mustang used a liquid-cooled engine. This meant its heart was connected to a massive network of radiators, coolant jackets, and fragile tubing, all located in the belly of the plane. Compare this to its brother, the P-47 Thunderbolt. The P-47 had an air-cooled radial engine, a 2,400-pound block of steel that could swallow a 20mm cannon shell and keep turning. But the Mustang? A single .30 caliber bullet through the radiator was a death sentence. Once the coolant leaked out, the engine would overheat and seize in less than 20 minutes. If you were deep over Germany and you felt that first shudder of the engine, you knew. You were never seeing home again. If you were deep over Germany and you felt that first shudder of the engine, you knew. You were never seeing home again. To hit a train, a truck, or a flak tower, a pilot had to fly straight and level at under 500 feet. At that altitude, you weren't fighting aces, you were fighting a million-man anti-aircraft network. The math was brutal. Of the 2,500 Mustangs lost in Europe, only 550 were confirmed kills by enemy planes. The rest fell to flak, strafing accidents, and mechanical failure. At 200 feet, there was no bailing out. If your radiator was hit, you didn't have the altitude to clear the canopy and open a chute. You either rode the fireball into the ground or performed a high-speed belly landing in a field. And that's where the true horror began. By 1943, Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels had stripped Allied pilots of their status as soldiers. He rebranded them as Terrorflieger, terror flyers. He told the German public that these pilots were Luftgangsters, who were collecting bounties for murdering children. Heinrich Himmler issued a secret order to the SS and police. Do not intervene if a civilian mob attacks a downed pilot. This was a state-sanctioned license to murder. Over 3,000 cases of Lynch justice were documented. Pilots who survived a crash landing often found themselves surrounded by an angry mob of civilians who had just watched their homes burn. For many Mustang pilots, bailing out wasn't a rescue, it was the beginning of an execution. While the war in Europe was ending, a different kind of outlier horror was waiting in the Pacific. After the capture of Iwo Jima in 1945, the P-51 was tasked with very long-range, VLR, missions to Tokyo. These missions were a psychological meat grinder. A round trip covered 1,500 miles, almost all of it over open water. Over Europe, a navigation error of 1 degree meant you landed in the wrong town. Over the Pacific, it meant you vanished into the blue void. There were no landmarks, no cities, just waves. The worst day in Mustang history wasn't a battle. It was Black Friday, June 1st, 1945. A formation of 184 Mustangs flew directly into a massive, unpredicted weather front. In zero visibility, at 400 miles per hour, the formation disintegrated. Pilots were colliding with each other in the clouds. 27 Mustangs went down that day. 24 pilots died. The Japanese had nothing to do with it. The ocean and the air simply swallowed them. The Mustang's final chapter in World War II is perhaps the most haunting outlier of all. First Lieutenant Philip Schlamberg was a 19-year-old honor student from Brooklyn. On the night of August 14, 1945, everyone knew the war was over. The atomic bombs had been dropped. Japan was hours from surrendering. But a final mission was ordered for the next morning. During the briefing, Schlamberg turned to his leader, Captain Jerry Yellen, and whispered, "If I go on this mission, I'm not coming back." He felt his own death like a physical weight. Yellen told him to see a doctor, to get grounded. Schlamberg refused. He wouldn't let his unit down. On the morning of August 15th, while Emperor Hirohito was literally recording the surrender announcement, Schlamberg took off. Over Tokyo, the radio broadcast the code word Utah, the signal that the war was over and all planes should return. The signal never reached Schlamberg's radio. He strafed an airfield, took a hit from ground fire, and disappeared into a cloud bank. When Jerry Yellen landed back at Iwo Jima, he learned the war had been over for 3 hours. Philip Schlamberg was the last American to die in combat in World War II. He died for a war that had already ceased to exist. Nearly 15,000 P-51 Mustangs were built. Today, they are the crown jewels of museums, polished to a mirror shine. But those shiny surfaces hide the jagged reality of their service. The Mustang was a miracle of engineering that won the war, but it was also a suicide machine for the men who had to fly it low and slow. It proved that in the age of total war, technological superiority is always a trade-off. You trade armor for range. You trade pilot safety for industrial reach. The men who flew the Mustang didn't just fight the Luftwaffe. They fought the physics of a liquid-cooled engine, the vast emptiness of the Pacific, and the vengeful fury of a dying empire. They were the pilots of the Cadillac of the skies, but they lived every mission knowing that their legend was only one radiator leak away from becoming a grave. If the story of Philip Schlamberg and the glass cannon changed the way you see the Mustang, hit the like button. Every like tells the algorithm that these human stories deserve to be heard. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We decode the most incredible military outliers every single week.